Hi, this is David Bratanek with Coldwell Banker Southwest Realty. Today we're going through the home buying process stage 2, which is meeting with a realtor. And we're going to go through all of the questions that I would ask a realtor and how I would go about doing that and what the process really looks like. So let's get started by sort of first telling you what maybe you shouldn't do, and then we'll talk about what you should do. So when a lot of people are looking through at the end of their online search, so that's stage 1, at the end of that process, they start to see houses that they would consider buying, that they could see their family living in, and so they want to go out and see the house in person. So the first thing people usually do is they give a call to the listing agent and they say, "Hi, I'm Sharon and I want to go see 123 Main Street on Saturday at 2 o'clock. Can I go see it?" They might ask a few questions about the taxes or something like that. But basically they're calling for the purpose of making a showing. And then both the realtor and the buyer show up, they see the house, they probably talk for half an hour while they're in the house, maybe they talk for another 15 minutes afterwards, and then you kind of go both and part ways, and you don't really know each other or how each other like to work, but you've met them and you might continue working with them. You might do that with a whole bunch of different agents until you find one that you're comfortable with. Now, there's nothing wrong with doing that. There's nothing wrong with calling the listing agent if you don't have anybody in mind or know anybody. But I don't think that that's the most, or at least not meeting at the property, I don't think that's the most productive use of your time because you're focused on the house there and you're not focused on actually interviewing the agent to find out whether that's the agent you want to work with. And so I would suggest it's probably better to call around to a few different agents. Maybe it is a listing agent, you've seen a few houses, and so you said, "I really like that person. Let's sit down and go through with them what they can do for me as a buyer." So I would suggest that's an important step, and it's what I would do if I was purchasing, because the number one thing you're looking for is trust. You are buying a house is a significant process, and it's a significant amount of money, and so you want to make sure that who you're working with is meeting the needs that you have. Otherwise, the whole situation is going to kind of leave a bad taste in your mouth, and we don't want that when you're purchasing or making such a large purchase. So in that buyer meeting, what I would be doing is I would see if they could meet me either at their office or at my house. There's nothing wrong with meeting around the kitchen table of your home, meeting in the living room, and sitting and having an honest discussion about what the realtor does and the services they provide. Now, buyer's agent, what their main goal is to buy a house with you or help you buy a house. A listing agent, their main goal is to sell the house that they have listed. They already have a contract with the seller and they have to represent the seller's best interest in that deal. And so typically they are limited by law on the things that they can tell you and the advice that they can give if you're not a client of theirs. So that is something definitely to consider. But when I sit down with this potential realtor, I'm going to ask them a few questions. And the first thing that's probably going to come up is, what is the process of purchasing a house? That's why we're doing this entire series, in order to go through this process. And I go through this process with everybody so that they can understand where we are and kind of what's going to happen and what's going to happen next. So I go through the process first, and I would also ask them a lot of questions, because this is an interview process. You are basically hiring them to do a job, and so you want to get your questions answered, and I would as well. So my first question is going to be on experience. How long have you been in the business is a really common question. There's no right or wrong answer to any of these. It's just a matter of being comfortable with the answers that the agent gives you. There are brand new agents who have just started who are very good. They know about houses, they know about pricing, they're working with a team. I would find this out too, especially with a newer agent. Do they have some kind of mentor who can give them advice as things go on? Because every deal is different, And if you have a strange situation happen, you want to know that that person at least has someone that they can reliably reach out to without hesitation, and ask them a question about, is this normal, or what do I do in this situation? So asking their experience level is important for that. And it might you might not want to go, there's people who don't want to work with new people, there's people who don't want to work with maybe older people who have been in the business 40 years because they're set in their ways and they have a different way of doing things, maybe an older mentality to the real estate industry that might benefit you or it might not. So knowing these things is important, and it doesn't hurt to ever ask the question. I would also be asking about, how many deals does this person do? How many did they do last year? Are they active in the real estate market? Things change very quickly, and what's normal and not normal is really a matter of how many deals have it or how many deals don't, whether it's normal or not. And so, if it's an agent who's selling 1 or 2 houses a year, you might be comfortable with that, but you might also want them to work with an agent who's a little more experienced. On the flip side of that is somebody who sells 70 or 80 houses a year. You might say, whoa, that's, are you going to even have time to communicate with me and give me the time that I need in order to buy a house? Some people like working with agents like that, and some people don't. So it's all about personal preference, but I would ask that question as well. I would also ask them, are they working individually or are they working on a team? I think that's important because if you're working with a team of people, there are benefits to it. They will answer the phone immediately when you call, for the most part. But the difference is that you're working with a different person maybe on every house that you see. So some of that personal touch might be lost. Also, when you're working with a team, usually you're not working with the team leader. You're probably working with somebody that they have hired underneath them. So expecting to get that team leader on the phone is maybe a little bit more difficult. So I would also ask about, as going back to experience for a second, are they full-time or part-time? And how long have they been so? There's a lot of part-time agents in this business, and some of them know what they're doing and some don't. Just like full-time people, some know what they're doing and some don't. And if you sit down with them and talk to them, there are a few considerations, especially if they're part-time, is what is their other job like? Are they working and can't answer the phone during the day when you maybe have a question, and they got to call you back after work, or they got to schedule showings of houses around their work schedule as well as yours, rather than being free all of the time that realtors are typically free. That does make a difference, and you should consider their time. If they're part-time doing something else as a full-time job, you should consider their time as being more limited than a full-time realtor who's doing like an average number of deals, or maybe they're above average, maybe double or triple average. That's still in the under 40 deals a year range. That's just a consideration to have. I would also ask them what their average purchase time is. If they say, and there's a few things here, if they said that, well, and on average we work with a buyer for 3 months, I would think that would be a little bit short for the average. You might have buyers who you work with for a day and you show them a house, they love it, they buy it, and they move on. That does happen, but it's pretty rare. Same thing, so if somebody said, 3 months you'll be done, I would be questioning, are they just trying to push you into whatever house they can possibly get you in? Same thing if they say, my average is 2 years I work with the average person. That seems pretty long. Why is it so long? And I would ask just some follow-up questions on that. What areas do they regularly service? Especially as a buyer's agent, you need to know the neighborhoods very well. In every town, there's a different mentality of this neighborhood's good, this neighborhood is not good, and you need to know that. There are lots of towns nearby where one subdivision, let's say, is priced $150,000 or $200,000 more than another subdivision. And as an outside buyer, you might not know that difference, and so you could way overpay for a property looking at the wrong comparables. So finding out whether these agents, this agent that you're talking to, actually works that area on a relatively consistent basis is a good way of knowing it. If not, they could maybe refer you to somebody who does that area. Maybe they have a coworker who they work very closely with, and they say, I don't know Petrolia that well, but this person does, and they're helping me out, and they'll give me some pricing advice before we go and make an offer. That could solve the issue right there. So none of these are make or breaks, it's just something to think about. I would also ask for references. I have a list of past clients that I could just give a phone call to, or give you their number, and you can call them and say, hey, what was it like dealing with this person? I think that's important in real estate. You wouldn't get a job without a job reference from your previous employers, most likely. So I don't understand why we would, as realtors, without hearing from somebody who's a legitimate buyer recently, who can give you some advice on what this person is like to deal with, and doesn't have anything to gain from giving a good or bad review. I would also ask about strategies. This is in multiple offer situations. There is a lot of strategy that goes along with when are we going to register offers? How much should I spend to not overspend, but also still try to give my best chance of getting the house? Where am I? There's a strategy for finding out what purchase price you're comfortable with. That even if you get the house, you're happy that you got it, but if you lost the house, that you're okay with losing the house because that was the most you were going to spend. Presenting offers in person versus emailing them. Do they have strategies for that? What do they do for letters that get sent to the seller? What are they talking about your financing with? The number one question I get in presentations for when I'm doing an offer presentation is, what is their financing like? We need to make sure that this person can close on the house. And if your agent doesn't know that information and isn't willing to use that information, you could very well lose out on a house that you don't want to. And the final thing that I would go through, and I would be very clear about this, is what are we going to do if I'm not happy? It happens. Sometimes personalities don't mesh well together. It's rare that I haven't had too much experience with it, but I have had buyers who we just didn't work well together. And instead of trying to, make it work, it's just easier to split ways and say, you go and do your thing, you go buy a house, and maybe they'll refer you to another agent on their team or at their office or at a different office. Maybe they won't do that. But am I stuck working with somebody that I don't necessarily want to work with? That's the biggest question that we have. Am I going to be locked into a contract that I don't want to be locked in? That's very key to make sure that you understand that, especially when working with family and friends. I've worked with my best friend, I've worked with my aunts, I've worked with cousins, I've worked with lots of family members and very, very close family friends. And always at my first meeting with them, I described the fact that this is a professional relationship that we're starting here, and I would rather us lose the professional relationship than lose the personal relationship. So I don't ever want to be in a situation where you're mad at me business-wise to the point that we can't be friends anymore. If we ever get even inching towards that, I always say, let's just separate the business from the personal. We can cancel the business relationship and you can work with somebody else that you're more happy with, but at least we maintain our friendship and our bond, right? And not lose that over one bad deal that neither of us really want. So overall, that's what I would be asking a realtor when I sat down. I know I tried to fit a whole bunch into as little time as possible here, but if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. There's a lot to this, and so feel free to reach out and we can sit down and go through it all in person if you'd like as well. Thank you and have a great day. Thank you for watching my video. Please like and subscribe if you'd like to hear more from me. If you have comments, please leave them in the comment section below or contact me. All of my contact information is beside me and below me in the description.